It's awesome to be here like it is every weekend, and we do like to have fun. We love to pick at each other and have a good time, and certainly all good natured. But we also don't believe that following Jesus means that we just run around all the time frowning, thinking about the stuff that we shouldn't do. That God gives us freedom, but He gives us hope and life. And so for some of you, this morning, you see this handsome man to my left, and you know exactly who he is. For others, I want to introduce RichRel, or Richard John Relaford, if you want the full official on the tax statement name. But RichRel is an amazing guy who we met, Gretchen and I met, it's over a year ago. But RichRel plays a role here at the Gathering Place. He's part of our family in official and cheering on from a distance and in-person capacities. He's actually our culture creator is the role that he plays here, because we'll kind of explain that again here in just a moment a little more in depth. But safe to say that it was about 7 to 8 minutes after we met that we connected. Right? And you started out right with feeding us.
Immediately. Because a few ministries that I'm associated with, one of which is World Vision, I'm their national partnerships manager. We had a meeting on the rooftop in San Diego somewhere. True story. It wasn't ours, but we sponsored it. And Alex was there at one of the tables with groups of pastors. And I kind of was the host, if you will. So I was floating around. And literally, the spot in the corner that I really shouldn't have went to, I kind of gravitated there, and I already had a couple of team members there, so that wasn't also wise. You want to spread out if you're hosting, but I just went right there to that table, and about immediately, I don't know, he immediately was telling me that the plane is moving to Lexington. He always had an agenda. He's immediately he's talking to me from L.A. going so when you move to Lexington, I'm like, what's going on here? I don't even know your name.
He's coming, guys. He's coming, and he's got really nice shoes this morning. If you hadn't been able to see these, but he's also got some really cool boots that are coming with him. But we were there for a church planting training, and so it was just amazing what God did very, very quickly in our experience, and just connected us in ways that none of us saw coming. God saw coming for sure, but also began to let us understand that He had already knit our hearts together. Like some of the things that you and I and Gretchen, even a part of this church, that we value. Because you can believe something and not live it out. If you value something, you act on what you value. And so one of the things for us with you being a culture creator is the idea of unity. And we're not here flying under social banners. We're not here under any kind of political slogans. But we believe that Jesus is the one unifier in our culture.
Yeah, I'll just say this quickly. It actually is, it's somewhat ironic that we're at a place where people think that we're following anyone's direction but the God who is one. I mean, you go back to Deuteronomy, and that's a prayer of the Shema where immediately that's throughout the gospel, right? And then you see Acts 2 where He unified all the nations. The representation of that word in that context is culture, right? Like ethnicity. And then Jesus leaves His final prayer moment in John 17 where He goes hey, just FYI, your greatest witness is going to be your unity of both that believe and those that will believe. So the plan, that's not a new plan, right? So we have to own the fact that it's actually not a new plan, so we can be confident in going that it's the both and. We want the gospel, we want hearts changed, and part of that is, guess what? Take me as God has created me, right, and honor and love me. And you see how, we want it to flow like that here in this culture, that it's right. It's not even some special button we have to push. This is how we roll, kind of. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's how we live.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And with it, if you can't tell, He means that, right? That's coming from His heart. And that's part of just how God brought us together and in what God is doing here with the Gathering Place. And we talk about the fact that we don't want to be a church, but a movement. Where God can get in, and He is the one that we pursue. He is the one who gives us drive and passion and hope. And so we're at Christmas, and I love the fact that you're here at this time of year, because we became family very quickly. And family is an important thing to celebrate at Christmas, and it brings all kinds of fun, good memories if you have those attached to your life, right? When I think of family, I think of good things. Certainly not from a perfect family, nor have I raised a perfect family, but those are good memories.
Yes.
We're talking about God with us in this series, and those bring up good ideas and concepts and truths. But what would you say to the folks that look at Christmas and consider family or friends or community, and they would say, it's great that you guys think that's a good thing. I got none of these. They don't bring up good feelings for me. They don't attach themselves to good memories for me. What do you say to that person, whether they're in the house today or watching from a computer or device somewhere online? What do you say to them?
So I would say, first of all, thank you for just an authentic conversation, because you almost feel bad as a human being going, when I get to the holidays, actually what happens is anxiety, or what happens is tears. I'm that person for you. Abusive household, disjointed, one of 11, broken, tough. I have 3 children that are 22-year-old twins and 20-year-old, tough household for many decades. Pain, y'all. The holidays, what do you do right when the holidays end, or the dynamics? Can we have a real conversation for those that know God and don't know him? And you're here now, you're saying, I'm actually possibly dreading this moment, right? Because part of we've lost focus a little bit on what the season is about. But I would say this. God is not confused.
There you go.
He's not perplexed. He's not saying, how do I meet them in this? He's not surprised. That's what I would say. And I would say that he's right there in the midst of it. And we joked a little bit as I came into this moment and said, if Jesus was around in his birthday celebration, I think he would be at the perfect tables and have some ham, but he also then would be out in the streets, in the restaurants, in the places where people sit. I'm just being real with y'all. We have to hold that tension of going, no matter where we are in our lives, that does not determine the perfect picture of what homeness is like with God and who he's here with. He's with us all in those spots and places, and it's important for us to walk that way and actually be mindful, to be not celebrate, but also, where's that tension in our life? That's part of the reason that community is important,
Yeah, and that idea, you mentioned homeness, that idea of home, and again, an important concept at Christmas for sure, and even with our series, God with Us, the idea that God stepped out of space and time into our space and time in Jesus, and that he dwelt among us in the King James, if you grew up on that, but the idea that he's with us. And then what we find in Scripture is that he actually takes up residence in us, that when we say yes to follow Jesus, that he says, look, my promise to you is that you will have my Holy Spirit, and that he will make a home in you so that we can be at home wherever we are. So
good. It's so good. Sorry, it's so good. I think for some of us can struggle for how deeply powerful that is. You're the God of the universe, all powerful, but you're choosing to make a home with me. Every nuance, every moment, every tear, right? Because the faces are one thing. All of us have some level of a face, but those quiet moments where you're looking and you're like, and my mother passed in 2007 after I followed his obedience to move to LA in 2006. What's that, God? Just that we have to right? We have to operate in spirit and truth and me in honesty of going that tension. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I just felt moved. The home, I'll make a home with you. Let me abide with you and you abide with us. That's not just words.
And so with that, kind of as we're transitioning, because RichRel is going to perform here in just a second, and I'm really looking forward to it. But what would you say? Because somebody may be listening in the room or again watching online and saying, okay, that's all well and good, but what does that look like for me? How do I find home? How do I find it, whether it's with the gathering place? How do I find home with God? What does that mean for me in my life to go from concept to reality?
Man, I thought God was giving me a word here while I was sitting there. By the way, John, great worship and the whole worship team, amazing job. Yeah. And I'm crying, right? Because you're still worthy of praise is what we're singing. And I'd say 3 specific things that in my spirit that's coming out and say that you are loved. There's alive the enemy. You are loved. So I'm speaking prophetically. Absolutely. That's what we would start with. And that's what God is saying and would say and been waiting to say, right? You belong. And that's why it's important for us to be people that make sure people know they belong in our home, in this space. That's why the local church is just real. This is the expression, because we do need to be a physical representation of the supernatural love of God present. Yeah. So that's the second thing I would say to the person. And lastly, right, we were walking away, they actually have a purpose. Yeah. That's the other thing that I worked in youth ministry for years and all that. Like, what's my point in my life? No one would miss me out. Who saw publicly Twitch that just was just happening to him? We keep losing people to suicidal thoughts and ideation. So I'm just going to go there. I'm not going to go light, because that's what the holidays do to people. That's a lie from the enemy. You're loved, right? You belong, and there's a purpose tomorrow, right? Let's walk through together, no matter how complex that looks like. And that's what I would actually say. And I just hope that my music and my time here serving and my ministry, in some way, that's what it's saying to people. There's a homeness to it all. I just found out in my catalog of music, I have like 3 different versions of Home. I didn't know this. Years ago, 2014, I released a song named Home. This other song, like He Is Our Home. I'm working on like Welcome Home. Like, I'm yearning in a bit, right? So that's when I'm walking out in my life of going, man, where's home? And God's letting me know I've been your home. And then there's times where we get physical representation of that as well.
That's right.
And the gathering place is a place where that you can feel that spirit. I'm just letting you know. That's not a commercial. That's real. And I do church. Like, literally, that's the industry. I go to churches all around the country. So, in a way. Anyway.
Yeah, I love it.